Wilson Morales from Black Film TV talking to the one and only Sam Pollard regarding his new documentary, The League. How are you, Mr. Pollard?
Good, Wilson. How are you?
Good. I'm old enough to know about the Negro League and to know some of the players you had in this documentary. How did this come about? You always are working, either you're directing or you're executive producing a number of projects. How did this one come about?
I guess over 7-8 years ago, Byron Motley, whose dad, Bob Motley, had been a Negro umpire, reached out to me with his producing partner and said that they were interested in me directing a documentary about a Negro League. And I knew a little bit, like you, I knew a little bit about the Negro Leagues, specifically about Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. But what he had was, he had written a book with his dad about his dad's traveling with Negro League players in the late 40s and 50s. And he also had interviewed a bunch of former Negro League players, which we were going to hopefully use in the film. So we went through the process of trying to raise the funds. And fortunately, Questlove, Ahmir Thompson got interested and came on as an executive producer, and then turned us on to RadicalMedia, who was the producing arm for this project, Dave Saronic and Jen Isaacson. And they were able to raise the funds through Magnolia 2929, a company called Play Action. And I guess over a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started pre-production research with a wonderful archival producer, Helen Russell. We brought in a story producer, Sheila Harris, and then Robin Espinola. And we started shooting last spring, summer. And we were able to get the film done.
That's pretty good. I'm surprised that maybe I just don't know that there hasn't been a documentary of this sort regarding the Negro League. Maybe they have, I don't know, but this one's, has enough in there for anybody who's just trying to get an idea as to who these players were, and especially now that we have the baseball season ongoing.
Right.
You want to recognize these guys for what they contributed to the game and, how the game has evolved. Obviously, when you have archive, is that a little bit of an easier process that, you can find footage? Now you hope to get some live interviews.
Well, we initially thought there wasn't enough archive to help tell this story. But fortunately, we were able to find more than we even bargained for. And there had been other films about the Negro Leagues, but they never got the kind of exposure this one is going to get, from a national perspective. So we were able to find archives that we didn't think we had. We were able to find lots of great stills from those periods, from the 20s and 30s and 40s. And we were able to, with the access to the interviews that Byron had shot, it gave us the ability to hear from these former players like Max Manning and Monty Irvin and Buck Leonard and Satchel Paige. So, and then there are many, and then there are many Negro League fans out there and historians who we were able to reach out to interview some and to also access to their own memorabilia that they had. So it was really all hands on deck. And then we added some other elements to the film, the recreations that we shot in Birmingham, Alabama at the Rickwood Stadium, and we put in animation to help tell some of the stories. So we weren't going to leave any stone unturned on how to make this film as dynamic and emotional, as moving as possible.
Was there anything surprising that you discovered, while you were doing this, that's outside of what you already knew going into it?
The most surprising thing, Wilson, was learning about Effa Manley, who was part owner with her husband of the Newark Eagles, and them winning the World Series in 1946. Also, what was interesting too was to learn about how people like Branch Rickey, who we always hold up to this wonderful light because he brought Jackie Robinson into the major leagues, but there was another side of his coin. There's a flip side to Branch Rickey, was that he got players like Don Newcomb and Roy Campanella and Jackie Robinson, and he didn't compensate those Negro League teams that they came from. And Effa Manley called them out on that. And that's a story that I didn't really know until we did the research. And so I think that's a new revelation, to see a different side of Branch Rickey and to know that there were Negro League owners who felt they had been shortchanged when some of their major players left them to go to the major leagues.
I think there's either a film or documentary on Ethel Manley that's coming up or has been out already. 'Cause I remember I wrote
Really?
something about that. That's why I discovered who she was because of something that was brewing up. So I have to go back and after we have this interview to see, if it came out or if it's still further along or in development.
It'd be a great dramatic film, you know. A lot of these stories would be great dramatic stories to tell with scripts and actors. And her story would be fantastic.
Yeah, look what happened with the Jackie Robinson story. It obviously introduced Chadwick Boseman to the big screen, and you have Harrison Ford playing Branch Rickey, but I'm sure they didn't show the side where he wasn't paying for the owners.
No, they didn't show that side. And you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but in 51, Jackie played himself in a feature film, the Jackie Robinson story, with Ruby Dee playing Rachel Robinson. Yeah.
What do you hope that you get out of doing this movie so that there's an awareness of who these people were, like Monty Williams and Satchel Paige? Is that the point of doing this, even though there've been other documentaries?
Well, here's what I always say, as a long time historian of the Black experience, I'm always excited to delve into these stories about our lives and to make people aware, both white and Black and other colors, that the story of the African-American experience is part of the American experience. And it gives you an opportunity to know that we have some very rich stories. And this is once again an opportunity to be able to present those to the general public so they can say, oh, I didn't know that, So, it's to me, it's always an important aspect of my career to tell our stories.
What goes into saying yes to the projects you take? Is it the story? Is it the time frame which you can do the time? Whenever there's a documentary and there's research involved, there's no time frame as far as the beginning and the end. There's no end game. You just got to keep going until you feel you have enough. What goes into deciding the project? Is it when you, even though you have a team, but do you think about like how long it's going to take to put it together?
Yeah, listen, you always think, first of all, the thing that will attract me to the story, if I think it's something fresh and new to tell about it, is there a new angle, a new way to tell the story? That's number one. The second thing that will, engage me in wanting to make a film is, okay, now that I think this is going to be told in a different way, in a fresh, invigorating way, how do I figure out how to raise the funds to do it? Who do I reach out to? That's number two. Number three, are there available elements, archival elements, interviews to tell this story? Because sometimes you find a great story, but you realize there's no elements to be able to tell the story. And then the fourth thing is, after you have that, who's the team that you want to put together that you feel can both shoot the story, edit the story, write the treatments, write the scripts, to make this thing come to life. So it's always a long journey. It's never easy to get these films off the ground. But if you really want to get them done, you will persevere.
Is there anyone still alive at this point from the Negro League?
Yeah, there was a story a few weeks ago about a gentleman, I forget his name. He might be in his late 90s, who played in the Negro Leagues. There was a story in some newspaper, maybe might have been the New York Times.
And then you hope that these guys, that most of them, not all of them, can get into the Hall of Fame. I was glad that you highlighted that, how they got in, and showcasing all of that stuff, especially with today's baseball. The game has changed over the years. Not only the players are in there, but now the rules, how to play the game. I think it's more of a business instead of a sport now. In terms of
what they're trying to do with baseball nowadays is to excite people, so people want to go sit in the game. They changed the rules. They're trying to speed up the game because, I went to some baseball games last spring and summer, because I'm living in Baltimore down the street from Camden Yards, and those games are long, 3.5, 4 hours. Now, I never had a problem with that because I love baseball.
Yeah, nobody complains about soccer games.
but we're living in a world now where the tempo of baseball was slower than football and basketball and soccer. So now they try to figure out how to ratchet up the tempo so people will stay more engaged. We'll see. I'm going to go to the game soon and see how I feel about the new rules.
What do you have coming up next?
I have another film that's going to premiere on the PBS series American Masters in October about the wonderful jazz musician and activist Max Roach, who played with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Monk, Clifford Brown, Mabby Lincoln, and so many others. So that'll be out in October.
Okay. And so, hey, right now we have the league for hopefully the people could see it while the baseball season, whether you're a fan of the game or not, this is something that people should know about. It's historic. So I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. We'll get this out. And obviously, you're always working. So we'll talk down the road.
My pleasure, Wilson. Enjoy your day.
Take care.
Bye.